My name is Lana ŽAJA and I'm currently working in Croatian State Archives. The title of this presentation is Survey Research and Analysis of Educational Program, Office Business and Documentation Management based on the content of the Module 1 Professional Training in the Croatian State Archives. In slide 2, as we can see, as a result, courses, workshops, seminars and other educational programs in the field of protection and processing of materials, office business, documentation management and other related fields are occasionally organized. As we see in this slide number 3 about this research, the reason for choosing this exact period lies in the fact that since February 2016, a systematic distribution of anonymous polls to all the participants has begun, and those polls have served as a basis for creating compilation of statistical reports and analysis of data obtained from them. Anonymous polls were first experimentally distributed for participants in November 2015, and they were computer proceed to serve as a model of experimentally conducted research based on the content of the Module 1 of Professional Development in Croatian State Archives. Survey research covers a period of 36 months in which is held 10 courses. The purpose of the research is to improve the quality of the course and the service provided by the Croatian State Archives, which was done in this year. In slide 4 and 5, I would like to say that we will go through each lecture separately in upcoming slides. Furthermore, for the purpose of this research, it was necessary to analyze all types of institutions in which participants work in the first place in the context of private or public sector, and secondly, in the context of institutional activities that each individual creator performs. The results of the survey include evaluation of the average satisfaction data on the date of the course and its duration, evaluation of lectures according to satisfaction with them, and evaluation of teaching materials, evaluation of lectures, evaluation of satisfaction with the acquired knowledge in the period between February 2016 and February 2019. Lecture Introduction to Document Management is based on the basic concepts of document management, business and information systems. It explains the purpose and functions of documentation system and highlights responsibilities, jobs and tasks in managing business and case records. The aggregated data obtained by anonymous pool show that the participants are, with the quality of the content of lecture, teaching materials, performance of the lecture, expected outcome, and the acquired knowledge at the end of the Introduction to Document Management lecture satisfied with the percentage of 88%, partially satisfied at 10%, and dissatisfied with 2%. Lecture Organization of Office Business is conceived according to types of business in document management. The documentation management rules are compiled in accordance with the regulation of office business. Maintaining office records, assignment of tasks and responsibilities in terms of the role of the office archive administration and other services are described. Collected data obtained by an anonymous pool show that the participants are, with the quality of the content of lecture, teaching materials, teaching performance, anticipated outcome, and the acquired knowledge at the end of the organization of office business, lecture satisfied with a percentage of 89%, partially satisfied at 10%, and dissatisfied with 1%. Lecture Archival legislation covers the entire archival legislation and office business regulations. It defines obligations of public and private creators and holders of records according to the law on archive records and archives and implementing regulations. During the lecture, explanations of certain provisions, documentation regulations in certain activities, and legal status of electronic documents and regulations governing the availability of documentation and information in public services are given. Collected data obtained by anonymous pool show that the participants are, with the quality of the content of lecture, teaching materials, teaching performance, anticipated outcome, and the acquired knowledge at the end of the archival legislation lecture, satisfied with the percentage of 87%, partially satisfied at 7%, and dissatisfied with 3%. The classification and organization of documentation lecture describes the basic units of documentation. It provides rules for structuring of documentary units, classification systems, and subject classifications. Classifications of business functions and its application in organizing and managing the files is described. The lecture interprets the optimization and maintenance of the classification plan according to the actual needs, and it explains how to solve the problems that creators of records face when using ordinance of unique classification marks. Collected data obtained by an anonymous pool show that participants are, with the quality of the content of lecture, teaching materials, teaching performance, anticipated outcome, and the acquired knowledge at the end of the classification and organization of documentation lecture, satisfied with the percentage of 83%, partially satisfied at 13%, and dissatisfied with 4%. Lecture Arranging Documentation analyzes the condition of documentation and the preparation of the arranging plan. It gives a description of the fundamental principles and the rules of archival arrangement and the organization of work on arranging documents. It elaborates formatting, editing, and sorting on documentation units, and it describes creation of system for checking, tracking, and documenting the arranging. The aggregated data obtained by an anonymous pool show that the participants are, with the quality of the content of lecture, teaching materials, performance of the lecturer, expected outcome, and the acquired knowledge at the end of the arranging documentation lecture, satisfied with the percentage of the 87%, partially satisfied at 10%, and dissatisfied with 3%. Lecture Creating document lists refers to records of documentation according to the regulation on office business. It elaborates selection and formatting of data, which describes documentation units. It structurally explains norms and rules of archival description and provides examples of standards for the description of electronic documents, as well as examples of comprehensive documentation list, and also its delivery to the competent archive. Collected data obtained by an anonymous pool show that the participants are, with the quality of the content of lecture, teaching materials, teaching performance, anticipated outcome, and the acquired knowledge at the end of the creating documentation lists lecture, satisfied with the percentage of 88%, partially satisfied at 10%, and dissatisfied with 2%. The organization of the work of archives. Lecture provides an insight into organization of work, tasks, and responsibilities of the archive. It describes the significance of the archive in the life cycle of a document and explains the relationship of the archive and other units in the organization. It structurally describes the arrangement and furnishing of the archive and organization of storage and working space, as well as the supervision of documentation that is in use. Collected data obtained by anonymous pool show that participants are, with the quality of the content of lecture, teaching materials, teaching performance, anticipated outcome, and the acquired knowledge at the end of the organization of the work of archives lecture, satisfied with the percentage of 19% and partially satisfied at 10%, and there are none dissatisfied participants. The lecture, Protection of Documents, considers the conditions for long-term preservation and protection of documentation on analog media, microclimatic conditions, material equipment, mechanical damage protection, and protection from biological causes of damage. It warns attendants of natural disasters, emphasizes the organization of work as a protection, and provides guidelines for security backup of documentation. The aggregated data obtained by an anonymous pool show that the participants are, with the quality of the content of lecture, teaching materials, performance of the lecturer, expected outcome, and the acquired knowledge at the end of the protection of documents, a lecture satisfied with the percentage of 92% and partially satisfied at 8%. There are none dissatisfied participants. The lecture, Electronic Documents Management, explains the types, shapes, properties, credibility, and legal validity of electronic records. It indicates the importance of record formats and storage media, as well as the use and handling of them. It provides insight into archiving and storing, copying, converting, migrating, and handling of metadata. General guidelines for documentation related to the emergency use and handling of digitized records are described. Collected data obtained by anonymous pool show that the participants are, with the quality of the content of lecture, teaching materials, teaching performance, anticipated outcome, and the acquired knowledge at the end of the electronic documents management lecture, satisfied with the percentage of 87%, partially satisfied at 9%, and dissatisfied with 4%. Lecture, Evaluation of Documents and Determination of Archival Records provides the basics of evaluation and the reasons for keeping records, which are administrative business and informational. It explains on what do they depend and how to determine which records are archival. It explains deadlines for keeping records and how to do checking of them and her their approval. It provides examples of inventory lists with deadlines for keeping records and describes the purpose of it and the aids for its making. Guidelines for the form and the content of the inventory list and the procedure for creating a list approval are provided. Collected data obtained by an anonymous pool show that the participants are, with the quality of the content of lecture, teaching materials, teaching performance, anticipated outcome, and the acquired knowledge at the end of the evaluation of documents and determination of archival records lecture, satisfied with the percentage of 89%, partially satisfied at 10%, and dissatisfied with 1%. The lecture, Accessibility and the Use of Documentation in Public Services, describe the basic principles of availability of information and documentation in the possession of public services in the European Union and in the Republic of Croatia. The lecturer speaks about the regulations that govern the right to access information, the use of information in the possession of public institutions, protection of personal and confidential data, access to archive material, and it introduced attendees of the course to the work of the customer service in Croatian state archives. Collected data obtained by anonymous pool show that the participants are with the quality of the content of lecture teaching materials, teaching performance, anticipated outcome, and the acquired knowledge at the end of the accessibility and the use of documentation in public services lecture satisfied with the percentage of 87%, partially satisfied at 10%, and dissatisfied with 3%. The procedures for protection and restoration of archival records lecture offers a tour of the Conservation and Restoration Center and introduces the participants to the conservation and restoration procedures. The second part of this lecture consists of visiting the photo laboratories and getting acquainted with protective film techniques, storage conditions, and photographic material protection measures. Collected data obtained by an anonymous pool show that the participants are, with the quality of the content of lecture, teaching materials, teaching performance, anticipated outcome, and the acquired knowledge at the end of the procedures for the protection and restoration of archival records lecture, satisfied with the percentage of 89%, partially satisfied at 6%, and dissatisfied with 5%. In slide 18, I expressed in percentages the ratio of public versus private institution is 86% versus 14%. In slide 19, I tried to express in percentages the highest percentage of attendees, 17% comes from educational system. Then follow 16% of those who come from companies, 11% from social welfare, 10% from economy and administration, 8% from healthcare, 6% from local government and culture, 4% from judiciary, 3% from finance, 2% from transport and sciences, and 1% of those who come from non-governmental, humanitarian and professional associations, construction, voluntary society, and country administration. In this period, only one person who worked in political party attended the course, which was expressed as a percentage of 0%. The evaluation of average satisfaction data on the terms and duration of the course for the period between February 2016 and February 2019, based on the total aggregated data obtained on the basis of anonymous questionnaires, shows that the participants are satisfied with the course terms and duration at the rate of 56%, partially satisfied at 42%, and unsatisfied at 2%. The evaluation of average satisfaction data on the content satisfaction based on the total aggregate data obtained on the basis of anonymous questionnaires shows that the participants are satisfied with the content is the rate of 90%, partially satisfied at 8%, and unsatisfied at 2%. The evaluation of average satisfaction data on the performance of the lecturers based on the total aggregated data obtained on the basis of anonymous questionnaires shows that the participants are satisfied with the performance of lecturers at the rate of the 88%, partially satisfied at 11%, and unsatisfied at 1%. Analysis of the data obtained on the basis of anonymous questionnaire showed that the participants are, with the acquired knowledge and competencies, satisfied at the rate of 88%, partially satisfied at 10%, and unsatisfied at 2%. In the end, I think we should definitely look back to the current state of affairs in the archives and detect the need for usage of the cutting-edge technologies. Like as Hrvoje Stančić, full professor at the Department of Information and Communication Sciences, Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences in the University in Zagreb, said in his work Disruptive Technologies in the Archives, some of new technologies will bring significant changes or will completely change standard operative procedures. Therefore, those technologies are called the disruptive technologies. The artificial intelligence, blockchain, and distributed ledger technologies, big data, and the technologies for digital participation like crowdsourcing and gamification are also analyzed. So, therefore, I think that we in the archive need to, in the near future, initiate educational programs in partnership with the Faculty of Philosophy in Zagreb and also other faculties from EU countries about those specific areas.